Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It's Chris, joined by Milton and Ben for episode number 77 of Outer Rim Transmission, your weekly source for the latest Star Wars breakdowns, news, and much more. It's Andor season, everybody. We broke down the premiere of 3 episodes last week. We are talking about episode 4 tonight in all of its glory. That's Aldhani, or Aldhani, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. On this episode, we get the triumphant return of Coruscant in live action. We get Mon Mothma's return to live action Star Wars. We also get to see what's going on with Seal Karn and his disillusionment from the Corpos, and what is going on with this brand new cell that Cassian is being inserted into. We're going to talk about that and what else is new in the world of Star Wars tonight. Of course, as we usually started off, we talk about our week in Star Wars, our experiences with Star Wars. I'll throw this one to Ben.
Yeah. Well, guys, for me, this week in Star Wars, it wasn't I would say a very eventful week. Like, nothing too crazy went on. There's some excitement with some of the news we're going to discuss tonight on potential stories and things like that. But, like, nothing in, like, the normal, like, out of the norm, I would say. It was more of, like, the normal week in Star Wars, talking Star Wars with you guys, talking Star Wars with friends or other people online for that matter. And, just more of, I would say, the social aspect of Star Wars was pretty much my week, just communicating and talking with other Star Wars fans, really.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, it's kind of outside of Andor, there's not much going on besides just like the social commentary on different episodes and people getting excited and different things like that. Lots of Easter egg things I was seeing on Twitter, which is funny because Grace Randolph literally said this show's not going to work because there's no Easter eggs, and all of us on the internet are looking at her like, this has some of the best insertion of Easter eggs in all of Star Wars so far, in my opinion. And we'll get all into that. So I had a lot of fun just kind of piling on with some of these people because it's like, no, we heard all this stuff about Easter eggs weren't going to be in the show, and we're getting some of the largest Easter eggs in Star Wars canon, period. What about you, Milton?
Oh, no, I had a good week in Star Wars. I would mainly say last Saturday, I mentioned, I finally got to watch Empire Strikes Back with my friend who's got into Star Wars. And actually, she has a little nephew that's really into Star Wars. So her and I watched that movie together, and I will say this is her assessment. She liked it better than A New Hope. I wouldn't say better, but a lot more than A New Hope, as I expected. Han Solo was her favorite character. She loved his story. She felt it was very much a Han Solo movie. Now, I have to agree with her in certain aspects of it. And then she said that she liked the overall story of the Empire, but she said her only regret that she wished she didn't know about Vader already being Luke's dad. Spoilers. Because who doesn't know that nowadays? And I've been trying to punk her for a couple weeks now and saying no, Anakin's his father. Like, Darth Vader's not his dad. But she knew. But I think even her reaction, she still was kind of taken back a bit, because of how the story played out. So she really enjoyed that one. So we're looking forward to watching Return of the Jedi whenever that time comes.
Yep, Return of the Jedi, the best of the original trilogy. So we'll see if she holds it as the highest.
We might have to fight on that one, but okay. No. Here's the thing. We can get into that in another podcast, obviously. But Jedi, honestly, as a kid, I will say, as a child, Jedi was my favorite at one point. Because Jedi was that very hopeful movie, and Luke was, badass. As an adult, I think as I got more appreciative of the movies, Empire just always connected with as I gotten older.
Yeah, well, let me phrase it this way. Empire is, from a production standpoint and a creative standpoint, the better movie. But from a favorite movie perspective, I think it's still, for me, goes on to, Return of the Jedi.
There's a lot of elements about that film that are it's very I love that part. I love that part. That's dope. I love a lot of the Luke stuff in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, what I was trying to tell her, I said to her, I was for a lot of trilogies, I'm how great Empire is. I'm you now hear people say, "Oh, that's the Empire of that trilogy."
Oh yeah.
She's like, what does that mean? And I explained it to her. I'm it's that good of a movie where people Empire took you to another level of storytelling. The Dark Knight is the Empire of the Dark Knight trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's how now people are probably going to say, no, that's the Dark Knight version. You know, whatever. You know, of that particular trilogy. So that's how good these second movies are.
Yeah, and equating this whole justification and concept is going to apply for me later on in tonight's episode when we're talking about Andor, because I have a few things to say about that I've already spoken to Ben about, and I've been chopping at the bit to get into this conversation via voice and not text, because this is going to be a fun one tonight, guys. I can already tell. But before we get to that one, I will talk about my week in Star Wars. I have been revisiting the audio drama, the first canon audio drama for Star Wars, Dooku Jedi Lost, and it's the whole storytelling of Dooku with his time basically leaving the Jedi Order. It doesn't really get into him becoming a Sith, but it does get him into reclaiming his family title on Sereno of Count and why he goes through that. And the reason I'm doing that is because in literally under a month, we are getting the 6-episode anthology of Tales of the Jedi, in which 3 of those episodes are going to focus on a younger Dooku with Qui-Gon. So I wanted to kind of refresh my memory, see if there's going to be any kind of parallel storyline going with that Tales of the Jedi. But the Count Dooku audio drama is great because it's going to actually not only flesh out Count Dooku, but it gives you like the entire backstory of Asajj Ventress. So what it is, from a standpoint, it's really a good idea of how Kevin Scott actually wrote this thing, because there's a lot of inner monologues that are coming from like recordings of Dooku, like talking about his comeuppance in the Jedi Order. So you have Asajj Ventress is basically doing a mission for Count Dooku in which she finds all these data recordings. So she's like just sitting back, finding out these recordings, and then also exploring her own past, where she comes from, Rat Attack, and her how she was stolen and basically used as a slave, and then she was reclaimed by a Jedi who then was killed, and then that's how she gets found by Dooku in the arena. So a lot of it does actually canonize the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series, in which we find her in that arena. So there's a lot of cool stuff there, but it does start from Dooku as an initiate in the Jedi Order and how he finds his family, and you know how Jedi can't have familial connection. So it's really deep, really cool. And one thing I found out that was really neat is the whole fact that there is so much High Republic lore that now I'm catching up on, because this was set in, I gotta say, this probably came out in 2018, and High Republic didn't come out until like 2020 or something like that. So like you could see all the seeds that Kevin Scott, who's one of the architects of High Republic, like things like the Nameless were mentioned, which are like the big bad force-sucking creatures of the High Republic, and then one of the ships, the Ataraxia, was confirmed, and then the whole thing with this Bogan collection and this one Jedi that basically turns into a... all this stuff that was seeded so far back, it's like, damn, they were really thinking about this thing ahead of time. So I had a lot of fun there, and then I also put up my reviews of the first 2 High Republic Phase 2 books, Path of Deceit, and so you can check those out on the channel now. But yeah, I would definitely tell you guys to go back and watch, or rather listen to the Dooku Jedi Lost audio drama. And I wasn't blanking on name. Yeah, I kind of was. Quest for the Hidden City. That's the other High Republic book. I did not want to leave that one out. That one's written by George Mann. Path of Deceit is written by Tessin Granite and Justina Ireland. So there you go. Those books are coming out soon. But anyway, yeah, I would strongly recommend it. I know you guys love listening to the audio stuff, so can't recommend that one enough.
I mean,
I'll
hey,
check it
that's
out. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say that it's good that it's about Dooku. I mean, obviously it's about Dooku, but it's kind of fitting with Tales of the Jedi coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, again, we'll get into the show later, but like, I am looking forward to Tales of the Jedi, mainly because it's the animation of Clone Wars, obviously, and how it looks. And I feel like Dooku's one of those characters that we still don't know enough about. I know we got glimpses of him in like books and comics here or there, but I'm really interested to see how they're going to flesh him out in that animated series. But yeah, I'll definitely check out that audiobook eventually. Yeah,
it does feel very Legends-esque, I gotta say. I think you guys are really going to get a kick out of it. There's some really dark stuff that happens. A lot of it is on Coruscant. you hear a lot from Yoda, but there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on. It predates the Clone Wars and all. So it's always a nice kind of glimpse at the galaxy before like all out war and like the different missions the Jedi are going on. And there's these different dark side artifacts that they're tracking down. And one of the masters is like skirting with like collecting these things, but like there's Sifo Dyas that's having visions of the future. It's pretty freaking awesome. So go ahead, check that one out. And a little bit of housekeeping off the top, as we usually do. If you are listening to this on your podcast streaming network of choice, we are also on YouTube every Friday. Well, except for next Friday, which I'll get into in a minute. Every Friday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, we are going live. You can join us in the discussion in the chat room on YouTube, youtube.com/Starrapter. And of course, as I mentioned, you could listen to us on any podcast streaming network of your choice. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. As I alluded to just a moment ago, yes, I will not be on the podcast. There will be no podcast next week for good reason. And that's because I'll be in New York for New York Comic Con, the annual convention. The 4-day convention runs October 6th through the 9th. And there's going to be a Star Wars presence. There's 3 separate things I'm looking forward to. The first one is going to be the High Republic Returns panel. So I'm very excited for that. That will take place on Saturday at Saturday at 3:15 in room 406.3. Then on Sunday, we have 2 big panels. Sunday, we have Star Wars Stories from a Galaxy Far, Far Away. That's at 10:30 a.m. That's in room 406.2. That one's going to be basically about all your other catch-all Star Wars things being created into books and comics. So I'm sure they'll be talking about all the mainline Marvel comics, and maybe they'll talk a little bit about that Jedi Survivor book, and I'm sure they'll probably reveal a book or 2 there. And then on Sunday, a big actor from Star Wars, Oscar Isaac Poe Dameron himself, is doing a panel at 12:15 on the Empire stage. So you can catch that. And I'm pretty sure the Oscar Isaac panel will be streamed. So even you guys could check it out. I think it's like
nice.
Popverse or something like that. They're going to live stream a lot of the panels from New York Comic Con for free too, for free. So just try to look that up. I'm sure on Twitter, if you're on there, there will be a lot of people just sharing all these other panels, and go check it out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know a couple of our viewers will also be there, a couple of our listeners, so it's going to be fun catching up with everybody. I know there's a Star Wars costume meetup on Saturday at 2 o'clock, so if anybody's going to New York Comic Con, it's pretty cool. They have like the big like 100+ person costume picture thing. That was a lot of fun last year, linking up with these Mandalorian people that get the thing organized. But yeah, it's the annual thing. So of course I won't be here next weekend. So don't look for a podcast next week. I'm going to see what I could do on the channel. Maybe do some shorts, because apparently that's a very viable thing on YouTube now, as YouTube's starting to pump more money into that avenue. So I might be experimenting, getting you guys some more up-to-date coverage than I used to in years past, with short, like 60-minute reviews and stuff of that nature. As long as I have the internet, as long as the internet is working on my side, I will try to do stuff from the place. We will see. I don't want to promise anything, because I am going to be in costume all 4 days, so it's not exactly easy to do some of this content stuff. I'm taking more of a backseat this year. I say that now, but I'm bringing my stuff just in case. But I will send pictures on social media of who I will be. A couple of the costumes are already ones I've worn before, but I have a costume that I don't want to talk about because I think people are really going to enjoy this one on Thursday. It's more of a laid-back day. It's my shopping day, so I'm going to make a more of a casual kind of costume, which at least I think it's going to be a good idea. We'll see if anybody else does, but I'm looking forward to it. Maybe one of these years you guys will be able to make it out, because it is one of the better conventions out there. As nerve-wracking as it is to get in these panels anymore, which are a real pain in the ass, let me say. They don't do a lottery anymore. It's like a first come, first serve. You have to be on the app at 12 o'clock to like get in, and then there's a big ass line, and there's like glitches, and you can get kicked out, then you won't get any panels. So anyway, hopefully Reed Pop listens to what they did for Star Wars Celebration. Just make it a lottery. Just give yourself a chance to get in these things, so you don't have to be on your computer in the middle of a work day doing this crap, because not everybody can do that. But anyway, I digress. So I'm looking forward to Thursday through Sunday next week. Hopefully we'll have some cool Star Wars news to talk about on the following show.
Chris, the question is, is it you and the girlfriend going together?
Yep.
You gonna wear matching outfits?
Nope.
Okay. I thought you did that one year. You went to something, you had like both Boba Fett helmets or something.
Oh, that was she was borrowing my Mando helmet. Yeah, I had her walking down the street, but that was at Fan Expo Philly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was fun. No, she's being a DC character, a Marvel character, a Tim Burton character, and a Stranger Things character.
Okay.
So she is all these different fandoms. I'm basically sticking to Star Wars.
Gotcha. That works.
So it works. We have basically one main story we're gonna get into quickly tonight, and then we're gonna just spend the rest of the day talking, or not the day, rest of tonight just talking mainly about this episode for Andor. This comes to us from Tom Henderson, who is a well-known leaker, or whatever you want to call them, informant, whatever. He is saying he's heard some rumblings about, Disney wants a new Star Wars game every 6 months. And I mean, this sort of tracks. They want to have a AAA, meaning like a big game like Jedi Order coming out. But they also want to have a small game that could be, for instance, like Star Wars Squadrons, or maybe like Star Wars Hunters. So, I mean, this next year, 2023, that'll easily happen. We'll have Hunters, we'll have Jedi Survivor. The next couple years, I don't know, that might get kind of weird, because some games like Eclipse and Ubisoft and whatever Respawn is also working on, those games seem further out. But I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a story, but also a non-story, because it's like nothing's really tantalizing. It's like, yeah, Disney wants this to happen. Whether it will happen is up in the air. But I mean, it's a nice thought to have, because you go back to the Lucas Arts days, and they were basically doing this. I remember a new Star Wars game coming out like 2-3 times a year. I don't know about you guys, but like I pretty much remember that happening a lot.
Yeah, the difference is. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I think the thing with this whole situation, or this whole report, let's take it for pure truth. I think it's a really good thing for Star Wars, even if, let's say, the games, I don't know, I don't want to say turn out to not be like the best games ever, but it's kind of like what we talked about before in prior podcasts, like, at least games are coming out, so if there's one you don't like, you can just move on to the next. But my thing with it is, this sounds like really, really ambitious especially for Lucasfilm with all their, or Star Wars in general, for all their like delays and things. So like, me, it's kind of like more of a wait and see if it turns out to actually happen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The game industries is so volatile. You have games that get delayed. Yep. You have certain games that actually have moved up in the last week. Like, I'm looking at the game Scorn. It was supposed to come out 10/21. It's coming out like 10/12 or something. It's like, anymore, it's like, and then they moved up like Marvel's Midnight Suns, which got delayed first, and it got delayed again into next year, and then they pushed it up to December. So you can have all the faith in the world that your games will come out, but, God forbid a deadly virus breaks out or something. The world is so fragile with these things happening that it's like, oh, you just can't ever be sure. But I am happy as heck that this is actually at least on their plan. Before it was like one game a year. Now it's 2. It's like, okay, yeah, the movies were like once a year, eventually going to do twice a year. And then now they're like once every 5 years at this rate, is what it's looking like. So who can know for sure?
Listen, like, my biggest thing is, they say they want this, but how many delays have we had? Like, I don't trust them. You know me, I'm salty about the games ever since they took over. Like, their past behavior dictates their future behavior. They say this, like, but then 6 months later, it's being recast or redone by a new company or delayed. Yep. Like, listen, you're right. Lucas Arts back in the day was piping out games every 3-4 months, but they were good quality games. Yes, there has some stinkers in there, but people were satisfied with the Star Wars games back in the 90s and mid 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I was remembering going to Toys R Us, going like, "Ooh, what new Star Wars game is going to be on the shelf this week?" And then my mom getting in trouble for buying me, the Naboo Starfighter game. And my dad's like, "You bought him another Star Wars game? Did you just do that 3 weeks ago?" Like I remember that happening way too much. This is like, there's too much Star Wars games. And back then, the N64 games were not cheap. I think they were actually like comparable to the game prices now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How expensive
The
games.
difference is though, like they would come out though. Like when they would come out, they would be like exclusive releases from what I remember. Now, you can get a game anytime you want because it's so easy to access. Like you had to go back with Toys R Us. We had to like go to this little place,
Oh yeah,
pick the little coupon out,
yeah.
and then take it up and they pulled out the case. Like that's how different it was compared to now. So yeah, I mean,
Now
look,
it's digital.
Just bring back, yeah, digital, whatever. Just bring back LucasArts. Let's be real here. Bring back LucasArts. Stop playing around with these Vices and Frostbite companies. Like, get your own department back to make us some quality games.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, Lucasfilm Games is just like the overseer. They're like, okay, you guys could do this. I mean, I like the idea. I do like the idea of don't like make a brand new studio and only have like some people that are good at this genre. It's like, just shop it out. Like, okay, this studio is really good with first-person shooters. Just put the Star Wars guys on that. This guy's really good with adventure games. We'll let them. So I do like the idea. Again, it hasn't really come to fruition yet, but I think once we start seeing the gears turning, and we're seeing the same thing with Xbox right now. If you're a big Xbox gamer like myself, Xbox first party, we've been hearing it for years. The Xbox has showed off like these Fable, Avowed, Starfield, like all these like humongous games with huge budgets, and it's like they keep getting delayed, and Xbox players and PlayStation players are out there saying, "Hey, Xbox has no games." But it's like once those games start coming out in a line, I feel like then people are going to be singing praises of Xbox. Same thing with the Star Wars franchise. Once we actually get into a rhythm where it's like, okay, 1 year we have a KOTOR remake, then 6 months later we have Eclipse, and 6 months later we have the next Respawn Star Wars shooter. Then can you imagine how great that would be? Like, it's going to be like Disney plus Star Wars, where it's like every 3-4 months we're getting a new show. It's going to be, I think they want to hit that same kind of stride to keep the Star Wars games always in the conversation about, oh, here's this other one, you like these kind of strategy games? Well, now we're switching up. Now there's going to be a space flight game, and then we could switch it up here to do this. So like there's a little bit for everybody. So I like the momentum. I think that's a good cadence to have, because especially if it's like an RPG, those games could literally take you 6 months to beat, and then it's like, hey, then I have a new Star Wars game to play because I'm done with that one now. So I think that'll be it's not going to be an overload, but I think 6 months is a nice little pace. We'll see if they can do it.
I mean, the biggest thing, they need to just make a game that's just replayable. Only
like
one
Lego Star Wars.
I
played it yesterday. I'm gonna play more Lego Star Wars when we probably get off of here tonight.
The only one I can think of has been Lego Star Wars, and I haven't played that one yet. But I know you guys like it. I know a lot of people who in the fandom love that Lego Star Wars game. I will say they've been consistent about that, and probably Jedi Fallen Order is probably the second game to that one. But I still play. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, Milton. Like, for me personally, my most replayed Star Wars game, of course, is the Lego game, and then the classic Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, because that's on Xbox. I love that, and it's replayable because you can still hop on there, turn the difficulty all the way up, and you're getting taken out by droids left and right. Like, it's still hard.
Or playing what I just played. I have Rogue Squadron on Nintendo 64. I got Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
You just played that? I haven't played that in years.
I have Shadows of the Empire on 64.
Oh.
Yeah, it's fire. Still hard, but it's fire. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's still challenging. I still have Revenge of the Sith on PlayStation 2. Like, I love playing that game. It's still replayable to me. So it's like if you can make a game that's 2022, that's 17 years old, and that people still want to watch it, man, like, or still want to play it, like, you're doing your job. Like, hell, Tetris is one of the most simplest games out there ever made, and people still play it. My dad has a Game Boy, and I played Tetris like a month ago, and I was still hype playing Tetris. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you make a video game, it needs to be very replayable, not just the current generation, but generations moving forward. Why do you think everyone loves Mario still? And Sonic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, look, Milton. Look at us, like being sports fans. I mean, say what you want about Madden, but Madden is always a high-selling game every year because people love to play it. Like,
it's definitely, if they put a Star Wars game together, which I know they've done it because they can do it. Because again, I still play The Force Unleashed. Moving forward, they should focus on replayability, obviously great storytelling, and obviously trying to connect with different fan bases on making the games.
Yep, that's just facts, simply put. So, getting into Andor, I want to open up the conversation here on Andor because I really enjoyed this episode, and this is Aldhani. I will preface this, like, this is a table-setting episode, and I know people are probably, like, chopping at the bit, like, especially after episode 3, like, it was like, yeah, we had this great tense battle that really felt like things were built up to that point. And then we get this episode, and it's a lot of, when I say table setting, a lot of moving parts around to places they need to be to start branching out the storylines, to start building into the next arc. I feel like the way Andor is going, maybe there will be like every 3 episodes, like a big, or every 2-3 episodes, I can see like a big climactic moment and then the fallout of that. And that's what I enjoyed so much about this episode, because not only did we get so much great fallout and character development on things that happened on Ferrix, but we're also introduced pretty seamlessly, I thought, into brand new characters without feeling like I didn't feel like we were juggling too much, and they were all interesting characters. You had an ISB agent, Imperial Security Bureau, never getting this far into that organization in anything Star Wars ever. I got a kick out of seeing these Imperials fighting dog eat dog for power. We always know about the Empire going for power. These people are trying to move up the ladder. Literally, that's like what they say in the episode. So seeing that kind of way the competition in the Empire was so drastic and just so sterile. Like, I love the environments of just being in the stark white, but then cinematography focusing on like the rolling hills of like where they filmed it in Scotland with what Cassian was doing. I loved seeing Mon Mothma return, getting to see a different layer of her character. I never knew she had a husband. Just seeing how the spy antics played out. And seeing Cassian, like, understand, I feel like they did a good job enough of having Luthen recruit him, and why he's, just basically coalesced and said, like, acquiesced and said, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll join you for now. Like, and see how the people are reacting to him in this group that, yeah, it's too late. Why are you joining the group? I like seeing all the dissent that was happening there. It really felt like this was a real world we were dealing with, and that's the best thing I could say about this show so far, and why I think it's like really premier Star Wars television right now, is because it feels so modern as far as what we're looking at with other dramas out there right now. It feels like the character dialogue is written so well, the storylines are written so well, it kind of gets into that, it's not up there with Better Call Saul or like anything like that, but like, it does remind me a little bit about, I keep saying this before, it was like, this is that smart Star Wars where you have to read between the lines sometimes. Everything is not like spoon-fed to you. You have to kind of analyze things and maybe watch it again, really. I mean, this episode wasn't as much as the first 3 episodes, but you have to pay attention. You can't be on your phone and kind of multitasking. It's one of those shows that begs to have your attention, and it deserves your attention because, man, oh man, this thing looks awesome. It sounds awesome. And there was a heck of a lot of Easter eggs. So right off the top, that's my opening salvo is, yeah, while it wasn't in episode 3 where I was like sitting on the edge of my seat, I really enjoyed the quiet moments. I really got a lot of intrigue. This is the intrigue that I was expecting out of a spy thriller. Like, there's people making deals in back offices, putting up fronts and wearing little, like, metaphorical mask to hide from the Empire on the Imperial's core planet. I thought this was so freaking cool. I'll throw it over to Ben.
I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from on a lot of like your breakdown of it. Like, I can see where you're saying like it's like the table setting episode, and like just the different qualities like the episode brought, whether it be of course, the cinematography is on point on this show. It looks like a movie quality cinematography. I can give it that. Um, and then some of the parts you mentioned that you enjoyed were similar to me. Seeing Mon Mothma and kind of the behind the scenes on her was pretty cool. And it was great seeing her husband basically being having a good time with being it'd be like any of us if we were married to some rich senator and we were the stay-at-home husbands. Hey, this is pretty damn cool. Hanging out with this rich senator, basically being my wife. So you can tell he's living the life and having a good time with it. Kind of playing around with her, getting her annoyed, but it's a good little relationship right there. And then my little side prediction for that is I feel like he might get taken out by the Empire in this series. So it might be more of a driving force for her. Is kind of my guess. But anyways, I thought the episode overall was all right. I just think we're, I don't know how I'd say it. I think with this Star Wars or this type of Star Wars storytelling, you mentioned the comparisons to Better Call Saul or potential just other things in general. My thing is though, necessarily, do we need that in Star Wars per se? Because we have, look, The Mandalorian worked. Boba Fett didn't work because the creators just botched the character completely in that show. And then Kenobi, I feel was good, but there was just different issues with the show. I feel just from pacing and things like that kind of botched it. If both of those shows were really good, like Mando, I don't think any of the discussion of how amazing the Andor looks and the quality of it and the story beats would be if those shows actually did a good job of their storytelling. So I think that's just more of a kind of a referendum on Book of Boba and Kenobi for being a step down in terms of quality. But yeah, I just feel for me, I would say this episode's okay.
Okay. If that's fair, that's fair. Milton, throw it over to you. What are your first impressions, first thoughts on... I already know what you're going to say about the weaponry, so I know we could take some points off on the episode at the end of the episode for that. But what else do you want to say about this episode?
I'll start with the positive. I'll say the visuals of this show is on point. It's very much movie budget, and that's the first thing I said to myself, because whenever they showed Coruscant, which I lit up, I'm thinking about time we saw Coruscant. We haven't seen that planet in what, 17 years? We see it in the animations, but not live action. So I'm thinking, oh my god, that is Coruscant. I believe that's from the prequels. It looks so good. It was well lit. It was very much a movie budget. I will say I was impressed with the ISB, with how that looked.
Mm-hmm.
Love the white aesthetic look to it. I love what they're saying that they're doing. And he asked, what are we actually in? What's our purpose?
Mm-hmm.
He talked about healthcare.
Yeah.
That healthcare example was really good because
that was sick.
Let's be real here. That's how our healthcare system works in our time. So, quote unquote healthcare. But I loved the visuals of this episode. I loved how they're putting money in it. And the thing I said was, why haven't these other series besides Mando gotten the budgets that this show is getting? Unless they're just shooting it differently.
I know.
I feel like the budgets are so different, and when it comes to how these shows look. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, they're not
shipping because
it. What?
Yeah, Kenobi.
Timetable.
The other shows were shot in the volume.
Okay.
Well, no, and also this show's been in development for 3 years. Those shows were in development for 6 months. They turned around Boba Fett in 6 months. They rushed that the heck out.
That's a problem.
And
that's an issue, because if you want to give the best product, put the best time in it. We'll wait. How many times do they delay movies and video games, and we're going to wait? So I can clearly see that this particular project has a lot more care to it, especially from the visual storytelling aspect. All right, that's a positive I have for sure. I love seeing Mon Mothma. I love her character. I like what they're trying to
Mm,
do with her. I love how you can. I will say this show does a good job at making fear a real character. Like they make fear real in the sense of like, okay, she's saying I can't trust anybody. I have a
yeah.
lot on the line. And when we normally see Mon Mothma, we just see this calm presence, like
Mm-hmm.
character. We're seeing that she is very fearful and she's still a badass, but she's like, okay, this is getting real now. Like people are watching me. I have a lot to lose here. So we never saw that part from her before. So I feel like we're going to get a lot of that underbelly. This is kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
underworld of Star Wars politics.
Yes.
So and here's the thing, I like a lot of political like shows, like The West Wing is one of my favorite shows of all time. This ain't The West Wing, but like I can
House of
see that
Cards.
under House of Cards. Yep, I love House of Cards. I will say that's maybe a somewhat of a fair comparison, House of Cards, to this
Yeah.
show a little bit. Um, but I will say this wasn't my favorite episode.
Okay.
I was getting kind of bored with this episode. I know, again, I see what they're trying to do. I feel like the pacing to me is killing me right now because
I
if it were up to me, you can have two of these episodes in a row, but you got to change the pacing up at episode 3, which they did in episode 3. And then in episode 4, I think you need to continue to pay off how episode 3 ended. So then you need to build it to another through line of okay, let's. It's kind of like wrestling. You build up to your mid main event, you
Yep.
pay it off, then you build up, you bring the crowd down, then you build up to your main event to finish off the show. I feel like they went too fast here, where they paid it off in episode 3, and they really just dropped them down. And it's like, wait, just slowly graduate us down, and then build us up again to your next payoff of your next arc. So I just feel like the pacing for this episode, it just threw me because I'm thinking, oh man, I'm like, I loved how 3 ended. Now we're slow again. Like let me get through that and then
well,
bring me down.
well,
I
Milton,
just
you bring up a good point there. So like you talk about, how the pacing of it. I can't lie. Like about 3/4 of the way through the episode, I paused it just to see like how much time was left because I was like, man, are we gonna like get something here? And I was like, man, I don't think we are. Like, so I don't know. I think we need a dash of like the old George Lucas, like faster and more intense on some of this stuff.
yes.
I really think that's what this show needs.
Yeah, because honestly, like the part where it threw me, where I was like, I kind of tuned out, was whenever they were on the what's that planet with the Imperials? They're with the Highland people.
The
What's
Aldhani.
that called?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I was like, I mean, the first part of it, I was like, okay, I see. I'm trying to see what they're trying to establish, and then after Lucien left, it kind of just was like, all right, I don't care about these other people. Like I don't care about those villagers. And I know they're probably going to play a part, obviously, of them trying to steal from the Empire at one point. But I wasn't intrigued by that. Honestly, I was more intrigued by that ISB chick. Well, what are you
Oh,
doing
for
with her?
sure.
'Cause anytime she was on screen, like the pacing changed. I was like, oh, like give me this for the whole episode. Like give me one episode of Imperial stuff. Like I don't care about these people on the mountain. I really don't.
Hmm.
Like and I know they're probably going to play an integral part. I can't ignore that. I'm thinking, God, put this pacing with the people on the Highlands, because like this Highland is slowing it down for me. Like the lady who's actually trying to get ahead and actually snuff out the rebels. I'm thinking, okay, how is she figuring this out? There must be a pattern here, and she says it. There's a pattern of this. So where was this going? I love seeing what she's trying to do.
Yeah, I think what's going on with the pace, as you say, I kind of agree. Um, are we watching a show like House of Dragons, or even another one is Rings of Power right now, is they do a good job with ending their episodes where you want to watch the next one like immediately. And I was looking forward to the battle. I was like, "Ooh, we're getting a battle today. We're getting a battle today," and it just kind of go. They make it prolong. They went over the whole battle plans and everything, so you're already. And this is my problem with the show so far is that they just end the episodes very awkwardly. Like
Exactly.
they
And
end the episodes and you're like, oh, that
literally,
was it.
Chris, literally, I had to rewind the last like 30 seconds. Something, did that just end like that? Doesn't he give him
Well,
that
I
pad?
thought I missed a line.
Yeah, he gives him that pad, and he's like, "Oh, do you know how to operate this or something?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, yeah." And then they just cut kinda or whatever thing, and they zoom in on his face. I'm thinking, okay, are they gonna pay this off? And it just ends. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like that's a dumb payoff.
They need
Like
more of like a catching thing where they're like they show
yeah,
like the base or something like more tangible. We're like, oh, I can't wait to see
exactly.
that or something. Not just like
Well, just
show
look at
Andor for like the third time as they end the episode.
right, and it's not like Andor was doing anything to like keep you to want you to stay on the screen with him. Like
Yeah.
I always talk like there's a show, The Sopranos. The
Oh
Sopranos
yeah,
is one of
yeah.
the greatest shows ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they ended an episode, whether it was a softer episode or a more violent one, their endings always paid it off in a sense of like, okay, this is going to pay off within the first 15 minutes of the next episode, but it ended in the way of like, oh my god, I have to watch the next one. That's why people love Game of Thrones so much because
Mm-hmm.
I have
Yep.
they ended them so well. Even True Blood on HBO, like the first 5 seasons, they ended those episodes really well. It was like, okay, I gotta watch episode 4 next Sunday. This one, yeah, I'm gonna watch it
Yeah.
next week because we're reviewing the show, but I'm like I'm not excited. Honestly, no show I'm hyped about by watching every day, every week is She-Hulk. She-Hulk has been ending their episodes somewhat better than Andor, and I'm not saying Andor's
Yeah.
a trash show compared to the two. Like Andor's a way better show than She-Hulk. Facts.
Yep.
But She-Hulk.
Well,
ends her
my thing
episodes
with
where I'm like, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, my thing with all this too, like you mentioned, Milton, like it's like the hanging on at the very end of the episode, like pushing you into the next one. Like every week, Chris can attest to this. I'm not sure if you, Milton, yourself have caught up or started House of the Dragon, but every week, soon as House of the Dragon ends, I'm like, God dang it, I'm ready for next Sunday already.
Yeah.
Like that's how it is.
I see you guys' tweets. When you guys are like
Yeah.
talking about, hey, I'm ready for House of Dragons, and look, and I'm the one watching football around that time, and like I don't even care about that show yet because I'm gonna watch it because I haven't even finished Game of Thrones yet. But I seen
Okay.
you guys like talk about your excitement for House of Dragons, how it ends, and I'm thinking that's a good thing. Like, and people are saying how good that show is, and again they're keeping probably to the same pacing of what Games of Thrones was because it worked
Mm-hmm.
for what 8 years.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
100%. It feels just like Game of Thrones, and that's actually a good jumping off point in this discussion. Is so like take House of the Dragons, that show, different time period. It takes place a few hundred years before the original show, but it still has like a similar feel to Game of Thrones as the original series does. And like for me, so far, like Andor, it feels different from Star Wars. Like we have Star Wars characters, we have some Star Wars beats in the show, but to me, we haven't had a major Star Wars feel to the show just yet,
Right.
in my opinion, in the first 4 episodes.
And I think we all know that that's been on purpose because as we know, Tony Gilroy, he's the one that
Mhm.
doesn't want to like
Yep.
feed into the fans, and I respect that. Like I respect that you're trying to make Star Wars different, as I think he should.
Mm-hmm.
However, this man came and helped finish Rogue One and made it on point. We got to give him credit, and Gareth Edwards deserves a lot of credit for that movie too. But this project is supposed to lead into Rogue One. Okay, you got to give us that. I don't feel like this is part of Rogue One yet. Maybe it's going to be like that in season 2. I don't know yet because Rogue One was fire. I'm trying to trust Tony Gilroy here. I will say I see what they're trying to do, and when people say you're trying to make something different with Star Wars, I'm not comparing this to The Last Jedi because I know Ryan Johnson will say, "Oh, we tried something different." No, you wrecked The Last Jedi. I feel like Andor isn't wrecking Star Wars. No, I think it's just taking a chance and a different leap. But I think it's very much Star Wars, but it's different. They're not hitting you over the head with the pew pew force lightsaber stuff.
It's a
yet.
safer leap, though.
There we go.
Yeah. So I think there's a great comment in here from Battle in Boston's. They are Tim Sheets, who's often been in our chat room here. This show has a bigger feel to it than Obi-Wan. I agree. The worlds feel bigger. The slow intro of the Empire is a great building of suspension and fear. And that's where you guys are feeling disconnected from the Star Wars aspect in one of the portions, right? And I love that fact, how they are that bold to not even have a single Stormtrooper or TIE Fighter in the first 3 episodes. And they had this corporation that gets dissolved in this empire in this episode, and you're like, oh, like the Empire's here. Like
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, I kind of slightly disagree with that comment in the sense, like, I'm okay with them not showing stormtroopers. Like, I'm totally fine. Like, I like the ISB. I like seeing that because we're seeing a different type. We're seeing a different part of the not the Republic, of the Empire.
There you go, world building. There you go.
I mean, yeah, because I think of it, it's kind of like it's probably like the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
The IAB is probably the CIA
Exactly.
of the Empire. So you don't know what's going on in the CIA or the NSA. You know, they're probably doing some off the wall shady stuff. You know, they're saying it's all about freedom and protecting us as people. But let's be real here. They're probably doing some off the wall shit throughout other countries or in our country. So I like seeing this. I want to see this gritty side of the Empire. You know, I don't. This honestly probably should be an Empire show, mixed in with like Cassian and Andor trying to take them down. Maybe that's what the focus should be on this first season, of what the Empire is all about and how they're trying to figure out the rebellion, and then flip it in season 2 about, okay, Andor trying to, like, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot more Empire, and I like it. Like, that's what I'm gravitating to, is all the Empire stuff.
That's
that's where it's interesting right now for me.
That's where we were getting the predictions before we watched the first episode. We were talking about this a few times about how this show would be a good avenue and seen from the perspective of the Empire. Yeah, so we are actually getting that. I feel like
we're getting that. We're getting that.
Oh yeah.
Because from that security team that got messed up in, was it episode 3? That what's the guy's name? The ambitious soldier.
Cyril Karn.
Yeah, seeing his perspective. Obviously, with the IAB, with that old guy and those 2 people going at it, like, that is where my eyes are glued to the screen. I'm like, okay, what are they doing? How are they figuring this out? Because then he says, well, we brought your type in because we know you got promise, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so what's the Empire trying to do here? What type of people are they trying to bring in? Like, I love hearing about that.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you on that. For me, I honestly would say the most engaging part of the show has been the Imperial parts, the parts with Karn. Like, those parts I feel like have been the most intriguing for myself, just because I feel like, you know, like you said, Milton, when they're sitting there having that conversation, the Imperials, like, you're like, oh man, what's this about? You know, you have that, you know, the woman Imperial officer in that meeting, like, you know, Deirdre. What's going on with her? Yeah, you have her. You have, I mean, also you have the potential turn. Like we all can see Karn turning. You know, he's going to turn. We're seeing that a mile away, like, just by his facial expressions and things. So it's a matter of, like, how, you know, when are we going to start seeing him, like, sneak out data chips or something, or, you know, do that sort of, like, stuff. So, like, that stuff is way more interesting to me than, like, and, you know, as you mentioned, Milton, like, when it cuts back to some of the stuff with, like, Cassian on that on the planet with the people, it's just like, man, this is, like, slow. And then, like, the Mon Mothma stuff, that's interesting to me because you know, that's a character like we know and love, and we've never seen that side of her before, and it's just like, all right, there could be something here. And then I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we have interesting stuff with Mon Mothma, the Empire, and then, like, the Cassian stuff is kind of on the side for me so far.
I feel like they're and maybe that's on purpose. Maybe they're just letting that pay off later in the second half of the show.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I just don't gravitate to him quite yet. And here's the thing, he's a loved character too, because we loved him from that movie. Like, you don't make a show about Andor without not liking him in that first movie.
And Diego Luna's acting is so good.
He's so good. I love him as an actor. I love him I love his character. Like, he really was dope in Rogue One. I just think that, you know, maybe I think they're just dragging this out a little too long. They just really need to put something over the top where we're like, okay, we know what they're trying to do here. Yes, give us a surprise, And I do have a hot take, or I guess guess. I don't think it's that guy who's going to be turning to the good side. It's going to be that chick. I have a feeling that she's the one that's like.
Oh,
I feel like she
Ooh,
works
that's a
for like.
good.
whoa, that's nice,
I
man.
feel like low key, she's gonna double turn. She might have a tie to like what the rebellion's doing. I think she's overly like
Oh,
trying to say the rebellion's forming just to throw them off.
dude, she could be
That's
like I see people like saying about this. We have a big reference to Star Killer in this episode with the suit of armor that people see. That's like almost what you would wear in the game. But what is the female character's name in the game that is also a blonde hair Imperial agent that turns?
Oh, that's Juno Eclipse.
Yeah, what happens
Juno
if this is
Eclipse.
like the canon version of her?
She was never in canon.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
this
Like
could turn into it.
this could be like her from Legends. Like this character is basically like her, you know?
Could be. So in the game, she was an Imperial pilot,
Okay.
and then she was assigned to Star Killer to fly him around. Obviously, whenever Star Killer and Vader are going to confront the Emperor the first time, Vader turns on him, he kills him, captures Juno, and said that she's a traitor too because she was with Star Killer. And then
Mhm.
whenever he gets rebuilt, he saves her and they go on the run and they try to start the rebellion. So I could see them trying to rewrite it and make her kind of like the Juno Eclipse, which would be dope. And she kind of looks like her too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know how they're gonna pull that off, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I get now that I keep thinking about. I watched the episode twice. The Cassian stuff could have been a little bit repetitive in the fact of like you see Cassian walk up to the one lady. She's like, "Why are you here?" Then he walks up to like the other guys. "Why are you here?" Then the other guy from the speeder comes in. "Why are you here?" And like the whole time, like you don't really get any like charisma from Diego Luna in that point. Like he's just like standing there. He's not really making a name for himself. He's not really like doing anything extraordinary. He's just like standing there. So of course we don't like that part of the show because there's not really anything memorable going down. I
Right.
think the next episode is gonna blow up because that's when they're gonna go on that mission and from what we've seen, they're like diving off cables off the side of that dam in the trailer and stuff. So that next episode, we're gonna get some really big character beats for Cassian, I'm sure. But it's just, in an episode where there was some really cool stuff with Imperials and like Mon Mothma and Lucian like yelling at the top of his voice to that girl. I was like, oh my gosh, like the guy's like my father, like yelling, like whoa, at that one moment when he's like talking to her. I was like, oh crap, like Lucid, man, you're scared me over there, man. But yeah, so yeah, in an episode that I thought was pretty good. That was just the part that it was like okay, that's the part I like the least. I can agree with you guys. I like that part the least out of the entire episode. It's perfectly logical and all that. But let's start breaking the episode down a little bit more intricately. Starting with like the first scene where we have Lucian and he's talking to Cassian, and you have the big news. I put a video on this on the channel earlier about like, oh yeah, apparently Cassian Andor could have been serving on the front lines, on Minban as we see in Solo Star Wars story. It might have been cooking for Byron Valence from the comics, who was also at that battle too. So we're getting a little bit more again of the Cassian character in this episode, knowing that he was in prison. He did run just like Han Solo ran. Like most of the people died on that planet. What you guys like about that scene, about just everything going on there?
Honestly, like I didn't care. Like I didn't care. Like that sounds so bad. Like I just was like, like I was just not intrigued because I'm thinking, oh my god, how they ended episode 3. They're going into this. Like, I don't want to see talking. I want to like see this get. I want them to get followed. I want rebellion or the Empire to come after him, and then lead into like some dialogue. But I didn't care for the scene. Now I know what they were talking about. He was saying how like I do know where you were. I do know what type of person you are. I came after you for a reason. So that was cool. It was cool to hear that this guy is invested in this character.
Yeah,
But honestly, I could have done without the scene. I was like, whatever.
no, they needed that scene, man, because like the previous scene, they're getting fired at. Like he's on the ship with them. Like they have to figure out right then and there. Like, all right, what is he doing? Because like that now they're a little bit more safer, so they can actually have that conversation that they couldn't have originally, because it was like fight or flight, where it's like, okay, these guys are here, you got to come with me or you're gonna basically get arrested or get killed. Right. So what is it gonna be? Now they have a falling out. Like whenever you have a big action scene, you have to have some kind of falling action, because there's got to be fallout of what happened there. And I think, like, yeah, you could have had a chase scene, I guess that would have been fine. But then how would they ever get to this planet now with the rebel cells? Right. That would be a little bit weird.
That makes sense. And like I said, I know it's necessary for storytelling. I just think that it was just kind of too easy, in the sense of like it was very convenient. But again, I'm not writing the show, and it works. Like it did its job. I just wasn't invested. Maybe that's probably the best way to put it. I was like, oh, all right, I don't care about this right now. This could have been moved maybe somewhere else. But it needed to be there too, so I understand that.
Yeah, because weren't they going in hyperspace at that moment?
They jumped to hyperspace like 2 minutes into the episode or something like that.
So I think that's probably why they could have done it, because it's like, well, we're in hyperspace. Now is the time to talk, sort of thing. Yeah. And by the way, I gotta agree with Battle in Boston's here in the chat. He's saying, is the navigation system / voice on the ship actually the voice of K2? I don't think it's the voice. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like that's the same actor, or is that like the eventual voice that'll be implanted into K2?
I thought it was K2 as well. It sounded very similar. So you could be right. Maybe that's the
This is a new concept in Star Wars, or it's a new design that we haven't seen in a live action show, because with L337 or whatever her name was, I think that's right? L3337 or something. Like, yeah, L3. Like her brain was implanted into the Millennium Falcon, but you don't ever hear like the Millennium Falcon talking back. But we do know that there's like two brains inside of the Millennium Falcon that give it like its control and stuff. So it's really neat seeing that like this is a different kind of droid, I guess you can kind of call it, because he does interface with like this like little nodule like camera thing, which is pretty neat because it gives him a little bit more personality than just like a omnipotent like voice out there. But I like the aspect of like, yeah, it's just like an AI of the ship. Like we haven't really gotten it at Star Wars before, where at least talks back. So I do enjoy that aspect of it. But I'll throw it back to you, Ben.
Yeah, I would say, I definitely liked that aspect of it. I didn't realize that actually at first, or I guess I didn't realize it sounded like him. So, that's interesting. I'll have to go back and check that out. And then in terms of like this whole opening scene, I think with me personally, like, I don't know, on paper you have to have a scene like this, like, kind of briefing Cassian, briefing, I guess, us kind of as an audience, or like people as an audience. But then again, I do also think some of the stuff, as you mentioned earlier, Chris, when you were talking about the people on the planet, he eventually meets up with the rebel cell. Some of that was like kind of repetitive. I feel like some of this opening conversation was just repetitive in terms of like, once we got to that planet, I feel like the same beats got kind of repeated with Cassian and Lucian. Like, it felt really similar of like him, pushing him and, this whole thing of like, him joining. So I think, I don't know, I guess there's really no way you could go around it, because it's not like the scene was like a 20-minute scene or something. But, I don't know. I just feel like the execution was a little weird. But, I mean, it makes sense for the story. It makes sense on paper, like you said, for the falling action from the prior episode. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think there's, I don't know. Yeah, it feels almost like some of the show to me so far feels like it's like kind of like talking at us as well as an audience. Like it's kind of like the dialogue dumps you see in movies to inform people of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that when they're like walking through the hills. I could see that, where there's just like, okay, we're gonna explain about where these like 40,000 people went or whatever it was. They got moved out.
Yep.
But if it wasn't for the whole conversation on this Fondor ship, we would have never got the awesome reference to the Rakatan people being canon, which is like the
Yeah.
big people from the Knights of the Republic, like that built the Star Forge, that were like the preeminent beings in all of the Star Wars galaxy. So yeah, I never would have thought that information dump would have come from freaking Star Wars Andor, out of all places. I was expecting more something like that from like the Acolyte or something. So I'm like, oh, this show is full of surprises as far as Easter eggs are concerned. But that was a cool crystal he gave him. I was like, all right, that's kind of like a giant Kyber crystal a little bit, kind of like what Jyn Erso has. So I was like, huh, him and Jyn are a little bit more similar than we ever thought. But yeah, it's interesting how Lucien has so much trust in Andor just to give him that. It's like, what does he see in Andor that we don't know about him? Like, is he holding something back that Andor doesn't know, that us, the audience, doesn't know, of why he's so important to like risk his life to get this one guy that's a mercenary, and then he's gonna pay him like 200,000 credits, where like the rest of the people are getting paid like basically nothing, because they're like, oh, we're just like living here, just like boiling our water and hunting for whatever is still around that place to eat. It's like, how's this guy getting like, he's gonna live comfortably the rest of his life basically off this one mission, and we're still here. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. His son. Okay, so Battling Boston is saying maybe that's his son. That would be a freaking big plot twist if I've ever heard of one.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Well,
yeah, we don't know about the parents.
Well, yeah, we talk about Cassian's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like, don't they say in the movie that his parents been fighting this war? He's been fighting this war since he was like 3.
Yeah, something like that, or 6 years old or something.
So I mean, his parents were separatists according to the Catalyst book.
So let me break this down. So quick aside here, and I'm going to be paying attention to these articles every Monday because they drop some serious like cannon bombs on us. And on StarWars.com they put these things like Andor and analyzing Andor articles, or the Andor episode guides. If you look in the trivia gallery, they like straight up confirm that the flashbacks in episodes 1, 2, and 3 predate the Clone Wars. They're like way further back before the Separatists. Like, those guys have Separatist logos, but they're actually technically not Separatists. It's like a logo that's predating the Separatists, so they are still Republic. But yeah, it was stuff like that where they're like, oh yeah, in that article thing, they said like, yeah, this planet was basically cordoned off, like nobody could go there because there was this huge toxic destruction, as we see like that mining accident. So the kids somehow survived. So yeah, I mean, everybody was always talking about, in the sequel trilogy, like, Rey's mom, Rey's mom. I haven't heard of one person coming up with like, ooh, who's Cassian's father? Maybe we could start that trend on the Outer Transmission podcast.
That's because
Tim
Tony
Sheets.
Troy's a better filmmaker. He's a better storyteller. That's why.
True.
True. Like, he's not going to put something in here that's not going to pay itself off. He may take his time before it pays off. But
I could see the twist being almost Lucian's the one that killed his parents.
Facts.
Or, I could see something like that being more potentially even than his dad. But, I mean, his dad would be an interesting one. Or, it's either, I feel like, either he's the one that killed his parents, or, and maybe he's like, at this point regretting it. And, it's that whole type of, redemption for a character type deal. Or I could see a lot of this set up for him getting killed later, and that being kind of like the catalyst, I guess you would say, of pushing Cassian much further along into the Empire. Because, like, actually, if I had to do a death prediction right now, I think Lucien gets taken out at some point once we build up more of a relationship with him and Cassian, and then Mon Mothma's husband gets taken out as well. So, we're going to have a driving force for both of those characters, and I could see that being the reason why.
Yeah, let's shift over to Mon Mothma and the Lucien thing. And first off, I love this scene of Lucien on the ship, and like he goes into this like persona of this like aristocratic gallery owner. Like as soon as he puts on the wig, he like transforms. He's doing this stuff in the mirror to just like practice. And I was like, this guy has some range as an actor. Stellan Skarsgård, he is like the best thing in the show so far, if you ask me. As far as like, just like he's got this like tour de force kind of about him, like gravitas, like, and the fact that he's able to like go from this grim, like ruffled voice to like this like very uppity, like rich guy in this gallery. I was like, holy crap, like that was pretty freaking cool. Same thing with Mon Mothma, and seeing her so bubbly and like, I was like, oh man, like this is a Mon Mothma that like the complete polar opposite of this very stoic, like deadpan face delivering like exposition dialogue from Return of the Jedi that we've ever seen. It's thanks to Genevieve O'Reilly that just brings her to life. And again, just like I said off the top, like that whole concept of she's feeding the rebellion money because she's as we see her humble abode is very well decorated, and just you can tell by the clothes she's wearing, the costumes, it's like she's bankrolling the rebellion, but people are catching on. So there's that sense of urgency in this episode that's set up, that sense of like they could be on us at any given moment. You know, I love that sense of stakes that they built up already for like the rebellion's got to be so careful. They got to constantly watch over their shoulder, be careful. Like they were saying, like even the new driver of her like cab, it's like, yeah, he's pretty much probably an Imperial informant. They've been through this before. Like they're getting used to like having to have these conversations. It kind of reminded me of like, I don't know, like Sopranos or something, like going in the back room of like the deli or something like that to just get these deals made. It was that's where like you were saying before, Milton, about like the underworld with Star Wars. Yeah, this is like the underworld at its finest. They're not even in order. They're not even in level 1313. They're like in more of the higher up areas, and they're doing this stuff. And I'm like, this is pretty freaking cool.
Well, and that's what I said. Like that's why I mentioned earlier about that comment, because it very much is something that we don't see often. Yes, we know there's fear in Star Wars, but they're making fear a part of the show. It's a character. Like you can see the fear and hear it in Mon Mothma's and Lucian's conversation, because she don't normally act like that. And it's like, oh, like she's worried. And even like when in Rogue One, when they're fighting, going up against the Shield Gate, like she's worried. And when they hear about the Death Star, but she ain't like fearful of it. If that makes sense. She's like, no, people are watching me. People might know what's going on. She's like, we have to be smart. And I love how they portrayed that. I love that scene. Again, first of all, was it Genevieve O'Reilly? She's so hot, dude.
I know. Seriously.
I can't take my eyes off of her. Like,
I don't care if she's like 50 years old.
Well, yeah, first of all, she's 45. 45.
Okay.
45.
Great. And I'm thinking, good God, this woman, like, she is Mon Mothma. I know the first actress that played her in the original trilogy. Yes, she's that character. But just like I say about Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor, to me, this chick's
the same.
And that's the thing. They look so exactly the same. You can definitely tell she's younger because of the timeline, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Her hair's a little bit like brighter. But again, that's how you age as your hair gets a little bit older or lighter or whatever it is. Perfect transition, because her hair is darker looking in the Rogue One on purpose to match her up with Return of the Jedi. But I'm thinking, dude, she's so hot. But dude, I love how she acts. She does a good job with that character. She's going to kill it as the show goes on. So I cannot wait to see more of her.
What about you, Ben? What'd you take from this scene? Did you like it? Did you glean anything? Did it make you kind of more enthused with how the spy aspect and all with the Imperials and all that is concerned?
Well, I'll be honest, like, the stuff going on with her and Lucian, like, I thought that kind of sneaking around is what we would be getting from Cassian, like that type of, like, more sneaky stuff. So it was cool seeing, like, her, her going along with that. And then, like you mentioned to start this whole discussion about her, just seeing Lucian, like, like, go all almost cartoony, like, aristocratically, like that was great. And then her, like, throughout the whole sequence, I thought she did a really good job of basically, playing two characters, playing her real self, and then like the highfalutin senator that she is. She did that really well. And then, as I mentioned, like, the stuff with her and her husband was a pretty good, like, almost down to earth, real thing in Star Wars, because we haven't, like, if you guys think about it, like the stuff with Padme and Anakin was more like serious. You know what I mean? Like this feels more playful, more like realistic, what you'd imagine in a relationship, versus like Padme and Anakin felt more like galactic or something. You know what I mean? It felt more like dire. Like this felt like an actual real relationship in Star Wars. And then of course like Han and Leia was just developed clear, and then they finally got together at the very end of Return of the Jedi, basically. But I feel like her relationship there, it feels more like a real one, like what you'd actually imagine in Star Wars or imagine in real life. And then just to see where, I guess also my big takeaway with her character as well, how are we going to go from point A with her right here? How is she meeting Cassian is my question, because they are in two separate worlds right now, completely. Like he's at the lowest probably rung of the rebellion, and she's at the highest pot. I mean, she's the one bankrolling it. So like,
yeah,
how are we even getting to that?
Well, I don't even know if they will.
I'm saying that as in a good way, like not in like a negative way, just a genuine interest, like of how are we going to get from point A where we are now to that?
Yeah, I mean it's Battle in Boston has given us good points. Andor equals the Star Wars version of Downton Abbey. I haven't watched that show, but I could assume that show would match up with a lot of the dialogue and just the way that the general sense of it is. But I mean, nobody's saying that they have to meet this season, but at the very least next season, because we follow Rebels and the Rebels rescue her, and it's interesting because there is a Rebels connection. You get like kind of like a prelude to what will ultimately be the reason why she leaves the rebellion. There's a bit of dialogue saying about the something with the Gordians or something like that. Like there was like a dispute going on, and they cut off like their supplies or something, and like the husband's happy about it, and she's like, "You might have just caused the massacre of them or something, or somebody did." Or the people that he's hanging out with at the table that he's going to sit next to, which includes Sly Moore, which is a really cool little Easter egg that I perked up with hearing. And we know that she's leaving the rebellion in Rebels because she says the same thing, like, oh, like, there's something with the Gormians or something like that. So I was like, oh, there's a cool little foreshadowing of what we'll see down the road. So yeah, I don't know if she'll even leave Coruscant in this season, because this is all taking place during that like 1 year period. But yeah, how's she gonna get out there when there's all these eyes looking at her? It might not be until the first time when she leaves the Rebels that she can actually leave at that point. I'm not sure, but I mean, nonetheless, like I said, like you were saying, Ben, I just like the idea of a table scene, and maybe we're gonna get like a dinner scene, like it'd be Game of Thrones next week, where we're gonna have all these dignitaries kind of shooting insults at one another, like under their breath, and like a very like uppity kind of like backhanded kind of compliments and stuff like that. I'm gonna love that if we get that next week. I really hope that we get that.
Oh, I think that's where it's heading with her part of the story. Then you have the stuff with Cassian going on with him, his mission that he's on. But with her, I feel like we're gonna get some type of a table like dinner scene with the dignitaries. And then there's gonna be. See, I don't know why I could just see a lot of the stuff happening, but I could see her husband being like a slip up. You know what I mean? He could be the weak link that slips up and says something, and she gives him an earful about it, because he's playing it fast and loose is what I'm getting from his character. But there's got to be something, like, to me anyways, like with her character being potentially just on Coruscant, let's say. The thing is with her, there has to be something that pushes her character, like kind of like the momentum, like, to get it rolling. So like the thing is, what is it going to be? Is it going to be her husband slipping up? Is it going to be potentially her driver, potentially Imperial informant driver, listening in on a conversation with her and Lucian, or her and her husband talking about the stuff that's going on, or the funds or whatever? Is it going to be? I feel like it's got to be something to get the ball rolling for her character.
Yeah, I mean, to get the ball rolling would be the death of her husband. I think that's going to totally like change her character around because we see her so drastically right now. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
that would definitely set somebody in grief, does terrible things to you, and it also might harden her spirit to be one that has no more remorse for the Empire and that they got to get crap done.
Yeah, another point real quick to throw in there for you guys as well. I think with her character, right now, I'm not sure what you think on this, Milton, but like I think right now with her character, it's kind of like the whole, if you're a rich person, you can just write it away with money, and I don't have to be hands-on, like in the trenches with it. You know what I mean? You see that stuff, like, like you'll have wealthy people like, oh, I'm going to donate to this big cause just to like write a check. Like, to me, I feel like she's at a point right now. Yeah, she's involved, like as in what we're seeing on screen. Obviously other stuff could have been happening that will eventually get referenced to, but as of right now, she's just the rich person writing the checks who hasn't got her hands dirty yet.
Oh, I see what you
Right.
mean. Yep.
Yeah, and it might be an event that could push her over the edge to do something. You just never know.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that Senate scene. I gotta see they mention him. They mentioned the Grand Vizier, so cannot wait to see good old Masameda and controlling the Senate.
Yep.
And I love the fact how she was like incredulous at the fact of like, oh, like the Senate, these people, they've been stopping my every motion at the Senate. It's like, yeah, of course they have. It's run by the freaking Emperor. He doesn't have to say yes to anything. Like, you guys have just figured that out now, that nothing's passing even though the votes went through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how next week's going to go.
Well, speaking of Mon Mothma, do we think the person that she was referencing is Bail Organa?
Oh, yeah, they mentioned about a friend. I think it's Bail Organa.
Friend?
I mean,
yeah, it's got to be Bail, right? I mean, since he was on set for Kenobi, obviously, like
he's
I feel
already
like
got
gotta
a
be
cell.
Bail.
Yeah, but he's already got a cell. Like, I mean, they can retcon any book, but in the Ahsoka novel, which goes up to I think a year after Revenge of the Sith, like Bail comes to rescue her, and he's got like a Corvette and like 2 or 3 A-wings already. So it's like, okay, he's got his own like little cell, whether or not Mon Mothma knows about like his cell and is going to bring them together. And I could see something happening with like Bail Organa like meeting Saul Guerrero and being like, I am the complete polar opposite of how I do my tactics. I'm not like killing innocents and all this crap because
Yeah, did you guys catch that? Did you catch that when Lucian and Cassian were going to that planet meeting with that rebel cell? One of the people said Saul Guerrero like slit people's throats and stuff. I was like, holy smokes! They put that in a show. Like that's crazy.
No, because the guy snuck up on the other guy. That was a cool character moment. It's like this guy's just chilling.
Yep.
His friend's like, yeah, we'd all be dead right now. And if you were under the command of Saul Guerrero, he'd put your head on a pike. It's like,
Just
damn.
fun.
Yeah, I was like, okay, we got the Saul Guerrero reference. I think that could be happening next episode, right? Like, we're talking about like speculation. This character here, this character there. Like, all right, where's Lucian gonna go? He's got his information from Mon Mothma. We know from the trailer he's going to be talking face to face with Saul Guerrero. You get to see good old Benthic Two Tubes standing guard. Rest of the partisans, they mentioned the partisans. So yeah, I think we could be seeing those guys pretty soon. Let's go back or not go back, but just talk about the other character. And this entire character is getting just better and better. The Cyril Karn character. I said last week that he's one of the shining parts about the series is just the path that this guy that really, when you look at him from the perspective of, oh, we know these are the bad guys, like he's a guy that's like just doing his job. He wants to stand up to the corruption at his job where they're just being very complacent and just trying to write things off as we're going to say, this was a risk and it was dealt with. And no, he wants to actually get justice. He's the guy that's like the white knight that just wants to do the right thing for morality's sake. His employees, co-workers died. He's trying to just, get justice for him. And the fact that, he was probably out of his depths a little bit. And now he's cost hundreds, if not thousands of people their jobs at this point. Like, the ramifications that we get in this for him is kind of crazy because we've never seen anything quite like this in Star Wars. Like the repercussions on this level of like somebody messing up and having to live with the dire consequences. Like you see, like his chief is like, I didn't even do this. Like I wasn't even part of this. Like, can you imagine? I thought that was extreme, but I thought it was like really well done about like, oh crap, he really messed up, you know?
Facts. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, but you know what though? Honestly, with this character, like I know you really like him. I'm not sure about him yet. I don't know if I haven't connected with him yet. I don't really know his motivation. I know he's like a Boy Scout within, I guess, that organization. But I feel like he's kind of sketchy. That's just me.
Yeah, he definitely has, like he keeps saying, he could turn and go and turn good, but I could also easily see him basically, you know, doing a double cross on Cassian at some point in the series, being like, hey, I can help you, and then boom, turn him to the Empire or something. Like, you know, because, you know, I could see, you know, you mentioned, Chris, about him, like, being into justice and wanting the right thing done. I could see him viewing wanting justice as in, like, wiping out the rebels, you know, eventually doing it that way versus, like, just becoming a good guy. Like, because, I mean, let's be real here, guys. Like, from the Empire's warped point of view, like, they're doing the right thing in their mind. So, I could see Karn end up being, like, you know, an up-and-coming Imperial officer at some point.
No, I think it's the opposite. I think he's blacklisted. There's no way they're going to let this guy join the ranks of the Empire because they already seen him fail so bad. I think he's feeling remorse for his because we've seen how much he was with his coworkers. Like, that's why he was doing it. He was sticking up for his coworkers. He was trying to do the right thing. And now these freaking jerks came in and just basically got everybody's jobs, like, got rid of them, and now they're unemployed. So I think at this point, it's just like, screw the Empire. Like, I don't want to deal with these people anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, so it could go either way. It could go either way. But if, like, I think if anything, he's like, screw the Empire at this point.
Oh, yeah. I think we're obviously going to get plenty more of him. I do think, though, we're going to see plenty more also, maybe not as much, of course, but I think we will for sure see more of that Imperial girl that got a talking to, you know, in the meeting. I think we'll see plenty more of her as well in the series, just because, like, it seems like, say if he goes the turning route, I could see a lot of these people turning good, like him, potentially her, like, you know, these type of characters. And,
yeah,
you know, like we mentioned a little bit ago, I think Milton brought it up, like, you know, that girl is like, she was really pushing hard on, like, the rebellion stuff, like, you know, more than maybe potentially what would be in a normal conversation for the Empire at that time.
Yeah, and, you know, for as many new characters we got in this episode, we got a bunch of characters that we didn't get to meet back up with. We didn't catch up with Marva. We didn't catch up with Bix. We didn't catch up with a lot of those villagers back on, or any of the villagers back on Ferrix. I think we're going to get very much an analogous kind of thing with Star Wars Rebels, right? Star Wars Rebels, you know, there was some Empire presence, and eventually they buckled down. There was Empire everywhere. I think what's going to happen is we're going to get like a call from Bix to Luthien after Andor finishes this mission with those guys, and they're going to have to go back to Ferrix and try to, like, basically liberate it as best they can. So I'm thinking that, you know, we're going to get something with Damer, or whatever her name is, I have it written down somewhere, of the ISB officer. So I'm looking forward, Deirdre. I'm looking forward to just going to see what's happening with Ferrix, because right now that was, you know, it's a 45. First of all, I liked how the length was like 42 minutes long without credits. That's pretty cool. Hopefully that's a reoccurring thing. But it's interesting because like Rings of Power, like certain episodes, you don't get certain characters at all. And then the next episode you revisit them because they have such a large cast at this point. So yeah, will be interesting to see like the ramifications of the Corpos no longer in power, and then the Empire going down and really putting their boot down on the people. And are they going to be, and now are the villagers also going to be mad at Cassian because they're like, well, this guy freaking screwed us over, and now we're living in, this tyranny more than we had before, because the corpos weren't even really on there patrolling. Like, that was under their control, but they never had problems until Cassian Andor, and he already had problems, mind you, with all these other villagers owing these guys money or this guy's money, and now it's gonna be like, well, this freaking jerk caused the Empire to come down, and now we're basically almost slaves. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out, hopefully in the next couple episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get that eventual payoff. Yeah, I just hope moving forward, the story becomes more clear. I mean, obviously we know how it should end in the sense of like leading up to Rogue One film, but it's like I just wish things would just get more clear within this linear storyline they're trying to tell.
Yeah, Ben.
Oh yeah, like for me, I think when it comes to like the build up for the next one, I think you raise a good point there, Milton. Like, we don't have a crystal clear perfect story just yet. I don't think. I honestly think we're more in a show like so far, like what we've seen so far, just the first 4 episodes. I think it's more of a like character type show. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's not a show about. There's no set story just yet. It's more of a show about like building, Cassian's character arc. Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
like I think it's more that than story, in my opinion. Which isn't amazing, because you want a story, you want that character developing through an intriguing story. Is my I think issue with the series so far, because it's like, what story are we telling? Some of the parts are really interesting with the Empire, with these characters and stuff, but then we keep cutting back to the Cassian parts, and it literally feels like just like character moments where it's like, oh, Cassian has to witness this, oh, Cassian has to learn to trust this person, oh, Cassian has to do that. Like, it's more of like a character building series than an actual series with a story so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that we're gonna get maybe more of that. If you look at season 2, right, it's like, if you're only getting like 3 episodes per year of his life, essentially, it's going to be harder to have a through line with a story if it's going to be, speeding up every year. I mean, you look at, we keep making references, House of Dragons is doing that pretty well, though. Like, every episode, it's either like jumping a year, 3 years, or 10 years even, but they still are dealing with the same overall plot at that point of like getting who's going to be the heir to the throne and all that sort of thing. Whereas this, we kind of already know the end game. It's like, okay, eventually he's going to get the plans to the Death Star, and we know that the last episode of Andor, episode 24 or whatever, season 2, episode 12, was going to be like 5 minutes before he meets Tivik on whatever junk moon thing that was that he went to, the Ring of Catherine. We'll probably see him like landing on the Ring of Catherine, and it's like, well, we know where this goes, So I think we just got to acknowledge that this is maybe the story we have, but maybe not. I think that if anything, this first season is going to be a lot more. It's got to be a lot tighter than this next season when everything's in one linear time of year. I'm wondering if we're going to get any more flashbacks, because I feel like that could be something worthwhile. Seeing him like on Ferrix with Marva, and how he takes the name of his father, or his adopted father, of Clem, was kind of cool. Was kind of a cool character beat where it's like, okay, he really respected that guy apparently for using his name.
Yeah, I did notice that. That was pretty interesting too.
Oh yeah, that was a nice little nod to that character, and like you said, I feel like we're going to be getting maybe more flashbacks with his with him on his like the prior times back then, and it's just I don't know, a lot of this stuff to me with the show so far, it's like we kind of have an idea. I mean, obviously we know where the show goes, like where it ends, but for the character, but like I feel like it's just kind of we're just kind of like it's like wandering through a cave with your eyes closed or something. Like, like we're moving along. We're moving along. It's just more like, all right, we got some dialogue, some stuff with Mon Mothma that's great and all. We got some stuff going on with Cassian that's great and all. But what's the big thing going on? Because this is the thing, even looking at like Kenobi, for example. So Kenobi, we had obviously the threat of Leia getting taken or Kenobi getting discovered, and that was like a hook for the series, a hook for us. And then Book of Boba Fett, like that show had suffering points because it dragged. They tried to turn it into a character study when there should have been more action. And then you have shows like The Mandalorian season 1 and season 2. I mean, you were getting hooked. See, almost episode to episode. I feel like, we talk about how like House of the Dragon, has a hook at the end of every episode. Mando is like that for the most part. Every single episode of Mando, you end it, you're like, man, I'm ready for next week. Like, this show's damn good.
I disagree.
So that's the thing with The Mandalorian. I feel like succeeded really well on was, there was a lot of
episodes in Mando where they just ended up on the ship and it was like, okay, that was the adventure of the week. There were a lot of those. Yeah, no, 100%. But this is the difference. I feel like you may end up on the ship, but those episodes were so good, so intriguing, it made you want to watch the next one, even without a cliffhanger, if you know what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no cliffhanger per se on a lot of the Mando episodes, but they're so good and so engaging, I feel like it covers up no cliffhanger. Like, I don't think this show, in my opinion, if they would have released episode by episode, it would have got torn to shreds for the first 3. Like, if you would have released episodes 1, 2, and 3 weeks back to back, people would have been shredding it. But since, we're getting a 3-episode premiere, it helped it a lot. Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. And then, it's just so hard to compare this show to like other shows at the moment, just because, like I said, a lot of the direction's kind of unclear, and it's such a high standard to compare to. Because, we earlier when we opened the podcast, we were talking about Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people may not have that as their favorite Star Wars movie of all time, but objectively, that's arguably a top 10 movie all time, period. So, there's a difference there. And, for me, comparing Mando to this show, it's like comparing Game of Thrones to a startup show. Like, it's just no comparison, because, Mando's already made its cultural, impact, and this show has not done that yet.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There's a difference between a cultural impact and a show that does a little bit more, as far as, if I were to look at this and grade this, I would say that this is a better television series from the aspect of writing, from the aspect of dialogue, of the acting, of a lot of the cinematography. I think is in some cases better than Mando. I think where people get caught up on is Mando is just so popular that people automatically gravitate towards that because there's a lot of action, a lot of whiz bang stuff happening. But I think Andor is actually there's certain things they're not as separated as I think you could think. Yeah, Mandalorian pioneered a lot of things. They pioneered puppetry. They pioneered this and that, which is Star Wars is known for, and Star Wars has been known for that forever. But Andor is actually out there trying to do something that's more along the lines of a contemporary drama in the Star Wars universe, with really good talent and attention to detail, and it causes the viewers to actually think in a different way that a lot of the Star Wars viewers haven't in the past, and that's being patient with characters and plot lines, taking a little bit longer than what we're used to, and I think it is a little bit of whiplash for a lot of us because it's just something we're not used to. But I think in the long run, when we look back at this, we're going to be like, that was a damn good Star Wars show, that was unique, and it really pushed the boundaries of things in the future. And another thing, too, is we're looking at everything as like a 6-episode series. This thing's double the length of like half these shows. So I think a lot of us are having problems. Is we're like in the back of our mind, we're maybe thinking it's like only like 8 episodes long, but this show does have a little bit more room to kind of grow. And I know still it's like, well, you don't really need to have slow episodes every week, but they can afford to do that a little bit more than Book of Boba Fett that had what, like 7 episodes. So
Yeah,
you got to
I
compare.
think
If you're
that's
going to
7.
compare that too, then you got to kind of look at that as well. At least just with the Star Wars stuff, anyway.
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, that's a fair comparison to like bring up. Obviously, like we're not. If we were 4 episodes into Mando, that'd be halfway through the season. Right now, we're only 30% of the way through the season. So like that's obviously a good point there. Like my thing with it, I just think I don't know, a lot of that stuff as well just begs the question, like, do we need a more serious or more TV serious type show in Star Wars? Because look what's worked. Like, for the most part, like say, obviously Mando worked. Mando worked great. And then Book of Boba, you try to do like a slow character burn, and that didn't work at all because they messed up the character, and it was really slow, and a lot of the episodes were really slow for that matter. And then Kenobi turned out to be pretty good.
Well, I don't think the Boba Fett. No. The Boba Fett episodes weren't slow. They just we didn't get the character, the motivation that we wanted from Boba Fett. It was just kind of like, what's going on here? There was plenty of action in Boba Fett. I'll tell you guys right now. It's just. And that the opposite is happening here. We're getting so much character work. It's fantastic. But yes, it's because of that we're not seeing as much action, because we're getting more of that right now.
I think. Well, I mean that's a true point. I think though the thing is with these shows, like I said, it's so hard to compare with Mando, just because Mando's such a huge hit. Because like I would be willing to bet like sure, Andor is going to be getting its publicity right now, but when Mando comes back in spring, that's all that's going to be talked about, like on the internet. That's all we're going to see people discussing or trending even on social media is Mando, Baby Yoda, stuff like that. And that show is successful because of that. And I feel like this show hasn't broke that ground yet. Like Mando obviously broke ground. It was the first big Star Wars show. It was the first Star Wars show on Disney Plus. It was the first thing to draw people into Disney Plus. But I think like so far Andor hasn't broke the ground yet of like, oh man, like we gotta tune into Andor every week, like because I just don't think there's as much buzz as there would be with like Mando or even stuff like that, just because it's a side character, or he's a side character, and it's just the whole. I don't know. I feel like we're 4 episodes in, so it's hard to project 4 episodes versus a 2-season multi-Emmy winning show. So like that's a whole other thing as well. So it's just I don't know. I feel like I'm on a fine line here because Mando obviously has a lot of action. Every single episode has action for the most part, and this show doesn't. And like as I mentioned, maybe this show it turns out to be like where it's like, we get to the end of it, and you ask yourself, do we need this type of storytelling in Star Wars? And we may not, or we may. I mean, it just comes down to the final bit of storytelling, because like, for example, like I've seen people talk about like the seriousness of like Game of Thrones and Star Wars and things like that. We don't need like nudity and sex scenes in Star Wars, I think. So like like that sort of stuff, like I think there's certain things we don't need in Star Wars, and I think this show's kind of a wait and see. But if it's like if we go through 12 episodes and like 9 of them are really character heavy, it's like, do we need that, or do we need more action in the show?
Yep. Going back to the early 2000s, George Lucas had this show in mind, basically. I mean, I can't quote that directly, but he was developing a live-action Star Wars Underworld show.
Yeah.
I don't know what was going to be in it, but for me, I look at this show as being the closest thing to probably maybe George Lucas's vision. If I could maybe go out on a limb and be like, yeah, there would probably be like some slumming around in Coruscant and doing some stuff behind, bars and stuff like that. So if George Lucas was maybe thinking about that already, then I would say, yeah, it's fair game if they want to try something like this that's kind of similar. And heck, they have all that stuff like the scripts. Maybe they borrowed some elements from that because it was in the same time period. And not even looking at that, but like Disney didn't pay $4 billion for the Star Wars license to not play around and try different things with it. And
Right.
I think it's great to have variety. Yeah, oh yeah.
I was going to say, just like throw out there. I'll just throw out there real quick. Like, yeah, of course they have like they can do whatever variety they want. You can make a Star Wars comedy, but I'm just saying like for Star Wars fans, obviously some fans really like this style of storytelling, which is great. And my thing is though, I think a lot of Star Wars fans, when you turn on, especially what we've been conditioned to over the past few years with Disney Plus, with even take Book of Boba Fett. When we get to the Mando episodes, everybody was buzzing about it. Everybody was buzzing, and like Mando conditioned even more for Star Wars fans. I feel like Star Wars storytelling is that like action, high paced or fast paced, that sort of storytelling. And then, like I honestly, I had a good comparison from one of my good friends. He was like, my feeling on this is what he was telling me. He said my feeling on this show is like this show feels more inside baseball, like inside baseball for Star Wars fans, and like the general audience may be like, oh yeah, that's a fine show, but when's Mando coming back? Because it's like, this show's more in the trenches for Star Wars fans, I feel like, than the general audience would be.
And that's okay. I mean, some of the best content in other fandoms that has come out has been the stuff that's been like under the radar. Some of the best movies you'll ever watch are things that not everybody has seen because they're a lot more cerebral and stuff. I would just love the idea of like one of the best Star Wars things being like this. Like, why not go out on a limb and try not to, try to pave a new direction for Star Wars and give it that thing? Because like I know for a fact, like there's a lot of friends that I would recommend a show that aren't Star Wars fans because they're like, if they watch Mando, they're like, yeah, it's just like Star Wars. And I'll be like, hey, this is Andor, and I'm sure that they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is more of what they're up to speed with the stuff they watch. Because you could take like this thing stands so well on its own so far that you don't even have to have the Star Wars label, and it still would be compelling, for me at least, like up to this point. But it's, I mean, yeah, do you need it in Star Wars? Not really, but did we need Rogue One? And look how Rogue One was. I mean, there was up until the end, there was a lightsaber, and in that first half of the movie, there was a lot of just like random stuff that was happening, that still ended up paying off without Jedis and Force and the usual Star Wars kind of things happening.
Yeah, I hear that, but like the difference is with that component is it was still about the rebellion. Like we saw a lot of elements that was very familiar to what the rebellion was from A New Hope. And you're right, that movie didn't need lightsabers. We only had one scene with a lightsaber, and that's just Vader wrecking people, which was dope. But what I was going to say about storytelling with this type of Star Wars, we've honestly already seen this, but it's in another property. I don't know if you guys have seen that show called what's it called? Battlestar Galactica. When they redid it, like in the mid 2000s. Yep. That show was so good. It reminds me of Andor because they were they weren't forming a rebellion. They were already in a war with the Cylons, but that particular remake was a gritty version of what we were seeing, I guess, when that show was made back in the 70s. And seeing how Battlestar Galactica did it in that particular show, if anyone's who've seen that show on Sci-Fi, they did the same type of storytelling, a lot of character development, a lot of gritty storytelling, a lot of backdoor politics stuff.
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I like that show so much. But I felt that their pacing and the way they are doing their storytelling is maybe a little bit better than what we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, we're still getting there. The show is still barely fresh. Like, people need to remember that we're only 4 episodes in. I guarantee by the time we get to episode 8, which will be halfway through this, or I guess be 2 quarters in to the show, we're going to say, okay, we clearly see this direction. But I think we've seen this type of storytelling before with Battlestar Galactica. They did a really good job at telling that long version of a story. But they did do a good job at their pacing. I think that's the difference. The pacing was significantly improved at that time. Now, again, that could change with the show over the next couple episodes. But again, this show ain't trash. Let's be real here. Like, it ain't trash.
Oh no.
I just hope people will understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's just taking us a little too long to get where we need to get to. I know it's 12 episodes. We're a quarter through the season. Hopefully, this is now the second act of season 2. It starts to pick up for us.
Yeah, I think this is going to be...
That's actually a good point.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, that's actually a good point, Milton. I think with the show, maybe we just finished the first act, and now it's going to pick up more over the next 4 episodes. Like, we could have that, and that could change our opinions completely on the show. Like, my thing with it is, we just want to... I just hope... I guess my hope for the show is, like, I hope we don't stretch out, like, longer, like, long-winded, slow episodes just for the sake of, hey, we have 12 episodes to fill in time slots, so let's stretch it out. So, like, I guess that's my hope for it. So, like, as I mentioned, though, I think we are going to be moving more toward, like, the second act. And, this is going to be kind of like the mission, and, over the next few episodes, it'll be like the build-up of it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like probably the last like slower episode, just from the fact that we have all the elements that so far I know about. You got Mon Mothma that was introduced. You have all these like side characters that were introduced with Andor. We're on that planet, and now we're going to get into the big battle next week. We're going to get this dinner meeting with all these dignitaries. Whatever is going to happen with Lucian, maybe we'll check it with the people on Ferrix and like seeing how the Empire is really cranking down on. So I really think that next week, I sure hope that we're all in agreement that episode is going to be freaking fantastic. And it's just, we're dealing with the nascent rebellion, the early rebellion. There's going to be a little bit of a build up, and it's going to feel a little unfamiliar because it's in its establishing stages right now. But I think we've said as enough as we want to say, at least as I want to say about the episode. Unless you guys have other points you want to make up, I think we're going to start wrapping things up and give it our score out of 10.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll throw it to you first, Milton.
Yeah, overall, I thought this episode was okay. Like, it wasn't trash. Like, let me just keep it real and say it that way. It wasn't trash. I actually liked a good majority of the episode. Like I said, I love the visuals. I love the Mon Mothma stuff. I love watching all the Empire stuff. I think this show, and in a alternative universe, could have been very much an Empire show. So I think that's been very intriguing to me, seeing how all that is coming through. So I feel like the Andor stuff, just with his character in particular, has kind of slowed down the show at times. I believe that will change. But again, this episode wasn't garbage. I wish it was just flowed differently and the pacing was different. If I had to score this out of 10, I think I gave the last 3 episodes a 7.5 out of 10. I think I would say the same thing for this one, 7.25 out of 10. So.
All right, so we're holding steady. I will go with my right off the top. My review has not changed. I've had a score in my mind basically since the beginning of us talking about this episode. I will say everything I said off the top, succinct order. I like the world building. I like the inclusion of Mon Mothma and the spy elements. Right, this is billed as a spy thriller, and it's been hitting that every episode. Basically, we got a lot of that in that backdoor politics, as Milton put it. we got a little bit more out of Cassian Andor's backstory, so it's great that we're still peeling back layers. First, we found out he had a sister. Then we find out he was adopted. Now we found out he was a part of the Empire at one point, just like Han Solo. Like, who would have thought? So a lot of cool stuff happening there, and then seeing a new side of the Empire again. World building, world building, world building. I don't know if anything in Star Wars besides maybe Mandalorian has been doing such a good job as this in terms of that. Getting a look at the ISB and seeing how, it's so dog eat dog within the power structure of the Empire. It's just so fun to see. And all the performance of the characters, especially Luthien, especially Stellan Skarsgård playing Luthien, fantastic. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I'm really, really looking forward to next week. I think they did leave us with just enough to be like, okay, that's going to be what happens next week. I'm excited for it. So yes, 8 out of 10.
Oh yeah, I think for me, I think the episode overall was fine. Wasn't bad, wasn't great. I think it was just fine. For a lot of the reasons I mentioned throughout this episode, I think, a lot of the things we all universally agreed on, like the Mon Mothma stuff was interesting, the Imperial stuff was interesting. The Lucian stuff, like a lot of the funny thing is a lot of the new characters in Mon Mothma, I feel like so far have overshadowed Cassian. Actually, even though Diego Luna's acting's been great, I just feel like his character's been kind of boring. So like of course his character is going to pick up in the coming episodes, which will really help him a lot. I think it will be. We'll have a interesting dynamic in the next episode with him and the Rebel cell. I think that's a part to look out for, I would say. And then of course the spy element that you mentioned. You have Mon Mothma and Lucian putting on this show, like acting basically, and then whispering and sneaking around, and we find out she's the one writing the checks for the rebels, which, man, she's writing the checks. That means she's raking in some big bucks, actually. Mm-hmm. But yeah, overall, I thought the episode was fine. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I feel like it's just a solid 7 out of 10.
There you go. So we are still in that 7 to 9 range for our scores. Looking back at last week's scores, I think you guys gave it like a 7, 7.5. I gave it a 9 last week for the premiere. So yeah, we're still high on the show. I think still our average score is higher than Obi-Wan and Boba Fett going into this 5th episode that we'll be talking about in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, that's right. You guys can't hear us banter for another 2 weeks because, like I said off top, I'll be at New York Comic Con next week. I'll still be putting out content, so just stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing, actually, a thing for our listeners as well. Keep in mind, we're going to be reviewing 2 episodes by the time the next episode comes out. We'll be reviewing episode 5 and 6.
Oh, yes. So at that point, we'll be halfway through the season, so I think it'll be a pretty good idea of, all right, is this what we're hoping for? Potential, is it fulfilled? It took 6 episodes out of the 8 for Rings of Power to get its full potential for me. So it's not ever too late to go past the halfway mark, but you certainly don't want to have to wait through most of the series to get there. So we shall see how that goes. Again, I'll be breaking down the different book panels next week at New York Comic Con. So just stick to my Twitter. I'll be doing a live tweet. Because I don't know if anybody else that I'm familiar with is doing it. So, hey, I'll be doing it myself. So look at Twitter here, Starrapter. Find that there. What are you guys going to be up to in the next couple weeks? And where can I find you?
Nope.
Ben?
All right, well,
there we go. I was muted.
All right, okay. Well, just the look on Milton's face, I thought he was about to talk, so I was like, all right, I'm just waiting.
No, I was muted. I muted myself. I would say this weekend, yeah, we're live, people. This weekend just football, dude. It's week 4 of the NFL. I know I'm gonna watch some college football on Saturday. I have a relaxing Saturday and get a workout in. Sunday, my Eagles are going for 4-0. Let's go. We're nice. Jalen Hurts balling. You can find me on Twitter at MiltonWeber7 or Instagram at Milton7Weber.
All right, there you go, Ben.
Good stuff. For me, I mean, I'm pretty similar. You can find me. I mean, I'm pretty much just going to be watching the NFL this weekend. Of course, there's the Browns. Hopefully, go to 3-1. We're having a good season, even without our starting quarterback. So that's been nice so far.
I said it. I said your team's actually good. And if you hold out until he's back, you're going to make the playoffs.
Well, the thing is, I mean, to do a super quick NFL discussion. If Jacoby Brissett doesn't turn the ball over for us, I don't see why we can't win games because Nick Chubb runs the ball well, our defense plays well. I think we can hang in there and win games without him. So I'm excited to see where the Browns go this year. And then, I'm pretty much just going to be watching the NFL, talking to you guys, of course, about Star Wars and whatever other shows we're watching. I think I'm going to rent the movie Nope this weekend, either this weekend or this coming week, because I really want to see that movie. I've heard a lot of good things about Nope. And I'm super interested in it just because I heard there's I don't know, there's a lot of alien type stuff in it. So I'm super interested to check out that movie.
Oh.
And then the new season of You is coming out soon, which is really exciting because that's a great show on Netflix if anybody's ever watched it. So yeah, I'm just going to be checking out these new shows and movies, watching football, lifting weights as always, and you can find me talking about all this stuff on Twitter at RealBenMaynard, and then you can find me on Instagram at RealBenMaynard as well. And I'm just kind of documenting, me just working out and working on the process it takes to get shredded because it takes 6-7 months to get down to 10% body fat, and we're just slowly dieting.
Yeah, keep on fighting a good fight. Consistency and a plan is how you succeed, man. So just keep with it. Yeah. All right. So once again, we'll see. You'll watch us and you'll hear us in 2 weeks' time. But for Milton, for Ben, for Aaron, for Tim Sheets, for Lofi, and everybody that was involved in the chat room, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Starrapter, for more on this channel. Keep an eye on the feeds, the Twitter feeds, for some updates throughout the week, throughout the next 2 weeks. And until next time, may the force be with you always. End transmission.